Every Thursday evening, she came to light a single candle for a man the world no longer saw, but she still loved. I was just the church maintenance worker sweeping floors and fixing hinges until the night she forgot her scarf and I ran after her. That's when everything changed. This is the story of grief, of unexpected connection, and of the quiet, fragile way two broken hearts can begin to beat again together. Daniel liked Thursdays. The sanctuary was usually empty by evening, and the golden hush would settle across the pews like a silk cloth. The stained glass windows scattered the last of the sunlight into fractured rainbows on the floor. Dust hung motionless in the air. The only sounds were the creak of the old wood beneath his boots and the occasional groan of the pipes in the walls. It was in his mind the holiest time of the week, not because of prayer, but because of stillness and because of her. He didn't know her name. She always arrived as though governed by an invisible clock. She'd walk in alone, a slim figure in a charcoal gray coat, and head straight to the votive stand near the front beneath the statue of St. Anthony. She would light a single candle. She never knelt, never crossed herself, just stood there looking at the flame for a long, silent moment. Then she would sit in the same pew, third row left side, just behind the aisle's edge. She sat with her hands folded on her lap, her posture still face unreadable. Daniel always found some reason to stay near. Sometimes he wiped down hymnals that didn't need wiping. Sometimes he changed a bulb in a chandelier he'd already checked twice. But mostly he just watched her from a distance. She didn't cry. That was the part that unnerved him at first. People who came to light candles usually had tears, quiet ones, polite ones, grief that knew it had to wait its turn. But not her. Her eyes were dry, her face calm. It was something deeper than sorrow, a weariness of the soul, like she had already cried herself out years ago and was now visiting only the memory of grief, not grief itself. He started calling her Candle Woman in his head. It felt foolish and a little childish, but it stuck. Thursdays became Candle Woman days, and it became harder and harder not to wonder who she was. He tried not to pry, tried not to think about what loss might be buried in her silence. But every week she appeared with the same rhythm, the same composure, and every week she left something behind in the air, a feeling that lingered long after her footsteps faded down the hallway. Until the Thursday she forgot her scarf. It was a pale lavender thing, thin and gauzy, the kind that looked decorative more than warm. He didn't notice it at first. It was crumpled in the space beside where she'd sat, barely visible. But when he went to lock up there, it was soft, delicate, and undeniably hers. He hesitated. He could fold it and leave it at the front desk. That would have been the professional thing to do. But something in him stirred a strange nervous energy. She hadn't left more than a few minutes ago. She parked on the far side of the lot near the trees. He could catch her if he hurried. Daniel jogged through the side hall, the scarf bunched in his hand. The evening air was cooler than he expected, sharp with late autumn wind. He spotted her just as she was opening her car door, an old silver sedan, clean but weathered. She had one hand on the handle, her body angled to slide inside. "Ma'am," he called, slowing as he approached. She turned, startled. Her expression softened when she saw the scarf in his hand. "Oh," she said, "thank you. You left this behind." He offered it out. His breath made little clouds in the air. She stepped closer, reaching gently for the fabric. Their fingers brushed barely. Her hands were cold. "I didn't even notice," she said. "I guess I'm not very aware these days." There was a tiredness in her voice, not sleep-deprived, but bone-deep. She looked at him fully now for the first time. Her eyes were green, not bright, but the dusky green of pine needles, of something that endures. "You work here?" she asked. He nodded. "Maintenance, mostly." "Evenings. Daniel," he added. She gave a faint smile. "Thank you, Daniel." He waited, unsure if he should leave. The silence stretched, not awkward, but not easy either. "I see you here a lot," he said immediately, regretting how that sounded. "I mean, sorry, that sounded weird. I just noticed the regulars." She studied him for a second, and he half expected her to be annoyed, but she nodded slowly. "Every Thursday," she said. "It started as a promise. Now it's a habit. Or maybe a ritual. Hard to tell the difference sometimes." He nodded, though he didn't understand. She pulled the scarf around her neck. "I used to come with someone a long time ago. He liked the quiet too." Her gaze drifted to the stained glass windows behind him, though they were barely visible from here. "Well," she said, "thank you again for the scarf." Of course, she opened her car door, paused, then with a slight turn, she looked at him again. It's a beautiful church, she said. Yeah, Daniel replied. It is. She hesitated just a second more. Good night, Daniel. Then she got in and drove away. He stood there for a long moment after the red taillights disappeared, his hands still cold. The next Thursday, Daniel checked the sanctuary twice, made sure the heating was on the floor, swept everything tidy. He caught himself adjusting the votive stand, which hadn't needed adjusting. The door creaked open and she entered. This time when she lit the candle, she paused a little longer. He watched from the wings, half hidden behind a column. She didn't sit in the pew right away. Instead, she turned, scanned the room. Her eyes landed on him. She gave the smallest nod of acknowledgement, then walked to her usual place. Daniel returned to his made-up task, dusting brass candle holders, checking hymnals for wear. When she left that night, she gave him a nod on her way out. No words, but something had shifted. He slept lighter that night. 3 weeks passed, 3 Thursdays, 3 quiet visits. On the fourth, it snowed. It wasn't heavy, just a soft dusting that silvered the world. Daniel was shoveling the walkway when he saw her car arrive, the headlights glowing in the falling flurries. She stepped out with an umbrella, her coat buttoned to the collar. Inside, she shook the snow off her umbrella and looked up. You're always here, she said. So are you, he replied. She smiled, and for the first time, it looked like it reached her eyes. After she lit the candle, she turned toward the pew but didn't sit. Instead, she walked halfway down the aisle toward him. Do you ever sit in here, she asked. He shrugged. Sometimes. When it's quiet. Would you sit now? He blinked. You mean with you? I'd like that. She led the way to her usual pew. He followed, feeling suddenly like a schoolboy. He sat beside her, a respectful foot of space between them. I'm Elena, she said softly. I realized I never told you. He looked at her. Elena, he repeated. Silence settled between them, not heavy but cautious, like two people standing at the edge of something deep. I come here because my husband used to, she said after a moment, before he got sick. Daniel didn't answer, just waited. He died 5 years ago this week, she continued, and I kept coming, at first out of habit, then guilt. Now I'm not sure what it is anymore. The candle flickered in the corner. Wind tapped against the windows like gentle knuckles. I'm sorry, Daniel said. She nodded. Everyone is, but grief doesn't need apologies. Another silence then. Do you believe people can haunt places without meaning to? She asked. He thought about it. I think people leave pieces of themselves behind, even if they don't mean to. She looked at him, then really looked. I feel like I'm one of those pieces. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything, just stayed there beside her, letting her words echo. They sat until the church bells chimed. She stood. He stood with her. Thank you, she said. For what? For sitting. He held the door open for her as she left that night. As he turned off the lights and locked the sanctuary, Daniel realized something had changed, not just in her and him. The following Thursday, Daniel swept the nave, even though it didn't need it. He checked the candles, twice polished brass that was already gleaming. He told himself he was just doing his job, but he knew the truth. He was waiting. The door opened just as it always did. Elena stepped into the sanctuary with the same quiet grace, but this time something was different. She carried a thermos in one hand and 2 paper cups in the other. Daniel blinked as she approached. I brought tea, she said matter-of-fact, like it was a casual thing she did all the time. He stepped forward, unsure whether to smile or bow or say thank you. You didn't have to. She shrugged the faintest lift of her shoulder. I wanted to. He gestured toward the pews and they walked together to her usual spot, 3rd row left side. She set the thermos on the pew between them, poured into the cups, handed him one. Steam curled upward, carrying the faint scent of mint and something floral. Chamomile, she said. Hope that's okay. It's perfect. They sat in silence for a while. Daniel let the warmth seep through his fingers. Across from them, the candle she'd lit glowed steady. I almost didn't come tonight, Elena said quietly. He glanced at her. I had one of those days, she continued, when everything feels too loud, too sharp, like the world's moving faster than I can keep up. Daniel nodded. He knew those days. But then I thought about this place, she said, eyes on the flame, about sitting here, about not having to talk or explain or smile when I don't want to. She looked at him. You've never asked anything. He took a sip of tea. I figured you'd tell me if you wanted to. I'm not used to that, she said. A long pause followed, the kind that only exists between people who are quietly learning to trust each other. After a few minutes, she spoke again, her voice softer now. His name was Victor. Daniel looked up. My husband, she said. He died of pancreatic cancer. He was only 42. I'm sorry. She nodded barely. It was fast. 6 months from diagnosis to goodbye. Some days I think I'm still in shock. Other days I think I've aged 20 years. Her hands curled around her tea. He loved this church. Said it felt like peace even after he stopped believing in anything else. Daniel's throat tightened. Is that why you come? She nodded. I like to think a part of him still lingers here in the light, in the silence. Daniel looked toward the flame. Do you talk to him? She smiled faintly. Sometimes. Not in words, just in feeling. Silence again, but not empty, not cold, just full. I never had someone like that, Daniel said, surprising even himself. She turned her head. He cleared his throat. I was raised in foster homes, moved around a lot, no real roots. I think that's why I like this place so much. It doesn't go anywhere. She didn't speak, but her eyes were kind. He took another sip. Sometimes I think buildings remember us better than people do. Elena looked around the sanctuary. If that's true, this one remembers Victor. They sat until the tea went cold. When she stood to leave, she didn't say goodbye right away. Instead, she paused at the candle, looked at it for a long moment, then turned back. Thank you, Daniel, she said. For what? For not needing anything from me. She left the thermos behind. The next Thursday, she brought cookies, oatmeal raisin homemade. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he just laughed softly and broke one in half. They talked a little more each time, not much. Just a few threads at a time. She told him about the garden she used to keep with Victor, about how the tulips came up too early this year, like they were trying to escape the ground. He told her about a cat that had taken up residence under the back porch of the church, how he fed it scraps when no one was looking. You name it, she asked. Didn't seem right, he said. It's not mine. She smiled. That's very you. He wasn't sure what she meant, but he liked the way she said it. One night, Elena came in looking tired more than usual. Daniel noticed it right away, the paleness in her cheeks, the weight in her steps. She lit the candle, sat down, and closed her eyes. After a few minutes, he walked over, sat beside her. I didn't bring tea tonight, she said. That's okay. I almost didn't come again. I've been getting these calls from the hospital billing office. They think I should have moved on by now, close. The estate paid the final notices. Daniel didn't say anything, just listened. I feel like I'm failing him, she whispered, like I'm letting go too soon. Or too late, or the wrong way entirely. He stared ahead at the flicker of the flame. I don't think grief has a clock. She looked down. Sometimes I wish someone would just tell me how to do it right. He glanced at her. Maybe there isn't a right way. Just your way. Her eyes were glassy now, not quite tears, just the threat of them. I hate crying in front of people, she said. You're not, he said gently. You're just here. She turned to him, met his eyes. There was something in her expression, something fragile and bare. Then without warning, the church lights flickered. The power dropped out for 2 seconds, maybe 3 before the backup kicked in. The emergency lights came on, casting the sanctuary in a dim golden glow. They both looked around. Well, Daniel said, that's new. Elena let out a surprised laugh, short-breath. The sound seemed to surprise even her. Maybe Victor's telling me to stop being so dramatic, she said. Or maybe he's reminding you he's still around. She turned to him again, this time fully. Do you think the dead ever want us to move on? Daniel hesitated. I think the ones who loved us don't want us to stay frozen. Her gaze didn't leave his. He felt his pulse in his fingertips. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elena reached out very slowly and placed her hand near his on the pew, not touching, just close. The space between them was as tense as a held breath. He didn't move. The light flickered once more, but neither of them looked up. After a few seconds, she pulled her hand back. Sorry, she said quietly. Don't be. They sat in silence until the emergency lights shut off and the world went dark again. Only the candle remained flickering, like a heartbeat in the shadows. That night, Daniel stayed in the sanctuary long after Elena had gone. He didn't do any cleaning, didn't polish or sweep or fix. He just sat thinking of the space between two hands, thinking of the way grief softens into something tender. If you let it, thinking of a woman who came every Thursday to light a flame for someone she still loved, and who maybe was beginning to find the courage to feel something else too. The following Thursday, the sanctuary smelled like beeswax and wet wool. The rain had started mid-afternoon and hadn't stopped since. Daniel's jacket clung damply to his arms as he checked the votive stand, counting candles just to have something to do. He tried not to think about how he'd been watching the clock since early evening. Elena arrived without an umbrella. Her hair, usually pinned neatly behind her ears, was rain-darkened and clinging to her cheeks. Her coat glistened at the shoulders. She looked tired, beautiful, and a little windswept, like she'd walked through more than just weather to get here. "I'm dripping all over your floors," she said as she stepped inside. "We've survived worse," Daniel replied. "Remember the Halloween leak?" She laughed lightly. "Oh God, the buckets." He handed her a towel from the supply closet. She dried her hands and tucked the ends of her hair behind her ears. Something about her was looser tonight, not just in posture, but in spirit, as though some invisible knot had started to untangle. "Tea?" he asked. She held up a small thermos of her own. "I beat you to it." They walked together to her usual pew, sat down side by side like it had become a rhythm of its own. She poured the tea, black this time, strong, fragrant. They sipped in silence, listening to the rain hammer the stained glass windows. After a while, Daniel asked softly, "Do you want to talk tonight?" She stared at the flame for a moment, then nodded. "I was going through the garage yesterday," she said, looking for a flashlight. "Found a box of Victor's things." Her voice didn't break, but it caught briefly. There was a sweatshirt I'd forgotten, gray, worn, soft, still smelled like him. Daniel waited. "I buried my face in it," she said, "right there in the garage like an idiot. Cried for 20 minutes on the concrete floor." "You're not an idiot," Daniel said. She looked down at her tea. "Sometimes I worry I've frozen in time, that everyone else's lives kept moving, and I'm just here." Daniel's voice was quiet. "How long has it been?" "5 years," she said, "and some days it still feels like 5 weeks." He nodded. "Grief doesn't measure time the same way." She studied him. "What about you? Anyone you've missed?" He looked at his hands. "I didn't really grow up with people who stuck around," he said. "Foster homes, 6 different ones between 7 and 16. I never let anyone in deep enough to lose them." Elena frowned gently. "That sounds lonely." "It was," he said. "Still is sometimes." She was quiet. "I used to pretend the church was a castle," he admitted, voice low. "When I first started here, I'd come in after hours and just sit. Imagine I belonged to it like I was the last person on earth, and this was mine." Elena smiled softly. "Maybe you do belong to it," he chuckled. "I'm not sure that's a good thing." "Why not?" "Because sometimes I wonder if I've made this place my excuse to not try anywhere else." She turned slightly toward him. "That doesn't sound like you. You don't even know me." "I think I do," she said a little. The rain intensified. Thunder rumbled low and far away. Then with a sudden sharpness, the wind howled through the outer corridor and the power snapped off again. Daniel froze. "Storm hit something," he said, standing. But when he reached the breaker box, the switches were still on. The emergency lights failed to flicker this time. The sanctuary fell into a deeper darkness, save for the single flickering candle still burning on the stand. He walked back to Elena. "I think we're stuck for a while." She looked amused. "Like last time. Except darker," he said, and colder. He hesitated. "You want to go to the lounge? There's backup lighting there." She shook her head. "No, I like it here." So they stayed, two shadows sitting side by side, lit only by the small flame that had somehow survived the wind. Daniel leaned back against the pew. Elena pulled her coat tighter around her. "Victor used to say grief was like living with a ghost who was also your favorite person," she said. "You still love them, still want to tell them things, but they're not there. And sometimes you forget. You reach for the phone, you set a plate at the table. Then you remember, and it hits all over again." She paused. "And then you keep living." A beat passed. Then Daniel asked, "Do you ever feel guilty when you stop thinking about him?" Elena exhaled slowly. "Yes, all the time. If I laugh too loud or enjoy something too much, it feels like betrayal." "It's not, I know, I just..." She broke off. It's hard to let something beautiful in again, like it has to compete with the loss. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, maybe the beautiful thing doesn't want to compete. Just be beside it. He didn't mean to reach for her hand. He only meant to comfort her, maybe graze her sleeve, but his fingers found hers in the dark, and she didn't pull away. Her hand was cold, smaller than he expected, delicate but not fragile. He felt her tense slightly, then ease into the touch. They sat like that for several minutes, hands joined unspeaking. The candle burned low. Outside, the wind softened, the rain slowed. Somewhere in the belly of the church, the emergency generator groaned to life, and the lights buzzed faintly back on dim golden, uncertain. Elena let go of his hand gently. She looked at him. I don't know what this is, she said. I'm not sure I can. Daniel nodded. You don't have to name it. She looked relieved. Can I drive you home? He asked. She hesitated, then smiled the smallest curve of her lips. Walk me to my car, she said instead, like before. They walked side by side, coats brushing. The rain had thinned to mist. As she opened her car door, she turned to him. Her expression was unreadable, sad, soft, grateful. Thank you, she whispered for the quiet. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, but the words felt too big, or maybe not big enough, so he just nodded. She got in, started the engine, and drove away. Daniel stood under the soft drizzle for a long time afterward, hands still tingling from where hers had been. The candle inside the sanctuary burned for another hour before it finally went out. Daniel never expected her to ask. It was a Tuesday, not a Thursday, and he was patching a loose tile outside the sacristy when his phone buzzed. Elena, do you know anything about fixing old cabinet doors? He stared at the message. It was so ordinary, so strange in its ordinariness. She hadn't texted him before, only exchanged numbers once, in case she ever needed to reschedule a Thursday. She never had. He typed back, maybe. Depends on the cabinet, Elena. It's one Victor kept meaning to fix. I'd like it fixed now, Daniel. Where is it, Elena? My kitchen. Can you come by? Just for a little while? He didn't hesitate. Send the address. Her house was small, tidy, and quiet, the kind of place that didn't feel like it had been decorated. It had simply grown around two people lived in. A little dusty in the corners, but warm. She greeted him at the door with a soft smile and a towel draped over one shoulder. It's probably just a loose hinge, but it's been bothering me. He followed her into the kitchen. It was sunny, despite the overcast sky, with worn countertops and a crooked spice rack. The cabinet in question hung half open above the sink, one of the doors sagging just slightly. I tried to ignore it for a long time, she said, but something about today. He pulled a screwdriver from the pouch on his belt. I'll take a look. She stepped aside and watched as he crouched and fiddled with the screws. He tightened them slowly, letting the silence settle. After a few minutes, she said, This feels strange. He glanced up. Having you here. Like I opened a door I didn't mean to. I can go, he said gently. No, don't. He nodded and kept working. When he finished, he gave the cabinet door a soft push. It swung open, then closed without resistance. Done, he said. Nothing fancy, just needed someone to care enough to fix it. Elena let out a breath. It was part laugh, part something else release, maybe. Thank you. They stood there for a moment, the air between them different than before, a kind of hum, not romantic, yet not clearly, but charged with something new. She turned away. There's another thing, actually. Upstairs. Daniel followed her through the hallway and up the narrow staircase. The house grew quieter with each step, as if it were holding its breath. At the top of the stairs, she paused in front of a door. This was Victor's office, she said. I haven't gone in since the funeral. Not once. Daniel felt the shift immediately, the reverence in her voice, the tremor under it. You don't have to, he said. I want to, she replied. I just don't want to do it alone. He waited. After a long silence, she placed her hand on the doorknob and turned it. The room smelled like old paper and dust, and something faded like aftershave, long evaporated. The light from the hallway spilled in, catching dust motes that floated like suspended memories. The desk was untouched. A coffee mug sat next to a stack of yellowing notebooks. A navy sweater was draped over the back of the chair. A framed photo of Elena and Victor, taken in a field of sunflowers, stood on the windowsill, sun-bleached. She stepped inside first, then froze. "I thought it would hurt more," she whispered, "but it's just quiet." Daniel stood behind her, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel him there. "I kept telling myself I was preserving it," she said, "but really I was avoiding it, as if going in meant erasing him." "It doesn't," Daniel said. "I know." Her voice shook. "But I needed to feel it." She reached for the chair and sat down slowly. Daniel stayed in the doorway. She opened a drawer. Inside were pens, old receipts, a few ticket stubs to a concert dated 2015. She stared at them as if they belonged to someone else. "He had a habit of leaving pens uncapped," she murmured. "Drove me crazy." She smiled a little, then her face crumpled. The tears came suddenly, no sobs, just quiet, slow collapse, the kind that had been waiting for years. Daniel stepped forward and knelt beside her. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her cheeks. "You don't have to be." She looked at him, really looked. "I didn't expect you to come. I didn't expect you to ask." They held that gaze for a long time, then she reached for his hand again. This time she laced their fingers together gently, deliberately. She didn't say anything. He didn't need her to. They stayed in that room, her past all around them, her future still undecided for a long, long time. Later, as he helped each box up a few things, she said she was ready to let go of a stack of old calendars, a broken stapler, the dried pens. He asked, "What changed?" She looked down at the cardboard box. The silence started to feel too empty. He nodded. "And then you came," she added. He froze. "Every Thursday there, you were just quietly there, not asking anything, not pushing, just staying. I didn't realize how much I needed someone to do that." He looked at her, overwhelmed by the tenderness in her voice. She reached out, brushed his knuckles with her thumb. "Thank you, Daniel," she said, "for being a place I could step into." When he left that night, the air smelled like lavender and dusk. She walked him to the door. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so," she said. "I think I will be." She didn't kiss him, didn't touch his face or pull him close. She just stood there, eyes full and open, and said, "Same time Thursday." And Daniel, heart thudding, nodded. "Same time." Daniel didn't expect her to pull away. Not after the room upstairs, not after the way her fingers had lingered in his palm, soft and trembling, like something she didn't want to let go of. But on Thursday, Elena didn't come. He waited, stayed late, swept the hallway twice, tightened the kneelers in the second row, refilled the candle rack out of habit more than necessity. He sat down in her usual pew. The church was silent, save for the subtle creaks and groans of old wood adjusting to time. He pulled out his phone, hesitated, then typed, "Everything okay?" The message showed as delivered, not read. He stared at the screen until the battery warning blinked, then shoved it back into his pocket and left. Outside, the night was cold, unusually so for early spring. His breath came out in clouds. He walked slowly to his truck, wondering if maybe he'd imagined it all, if the warmth between them had been one-sided, or worse, if he'd pushed too close to a wound she wasn't ready to open. He didn't hear from her until Sunday. Just one message, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disappear. I just needed to think." Daniel sat with that for a while, then typed back, "I understand." She replied a minute later, "Can we talk?" "Not at the church, at my place, Tuesday." Her house felt different this time, dimmer, as though the light didn't stretch as far as it used to. Elena opened the door in a sweater too large for her frame. Her eyes were tired, but there was something defiant in them too, like a woman bracing herself to walk into a fire. She stepped aside to let him in. "I made coffee," she said, voice soft. He followed her into the kitchen. She poured 2 mugs but didn't sit, just leaned against the counter, staring into the steam. "I panicked," she said. Daniel nodded. "It's okay. No, it's not." She took a breath. "I've been trying to tell myself this is harmless, a friendship, just two people with quiet lives and overlapping sadness. But it's not that, is it?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "I find myself waiting for Thursdays," she whispered, "and then feeling guilty that I'm waiting." She finally met his eyes. "I loved my husband," she said. "I still love him. He's everywhere in this house, in the songs on the radio, in the drawer of socks I can't bring myself to throw out." "I know," Daniel said. "And you," her voice cracked, "you make me feel like I could live again, and that terrifies me." He stepped closer. "Why?" because it feels like betrayal, like I'm rewriting a story that already ended. Daniel's voice was low. Or maybe you're writing a new chapter, her lips pressed into a tight line. Her hands trembled slightly on the coffee mug. I'm scared, Daniel. I'm scared I'll forget him, or worse, stop missing him. What if loving someone new means losing him again? Daniel's eyes softened. You don't have to let go of him to hold something else. She closed her eyes. I wish I believed that. He stepped closer, not touching her, just close enough to feel the gravity. Elena, am I just a stand-in? He asked, his voice quieter than he meant. Her eyes flew open. What? Sometimes I wonder if I'm just filling the space he left. A placeholder, someone warm enough to lean on until you don't need me anymore. Her expression crumpled. No, she said. God, no. That's not what this is. Then what is it, he asked. Because I'm falling for someone who isn't sure she's allowed to feel anything for me. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum. She didn't speak. He stepped back. I shouldn't have come, he said. He set his untouched coffee on the counter and turned toward the door. Daniel, but he was already walking down the hall. He didn't sleep that night. He didn't come to work the next morning. Either called in for the first time in 3 years, said he had a cold. No one questioned it. Tuesday passed. Wednesday. Thursday came. He didn't plan on going to the church at all, but muscle memory took over. He found himself walking the darkened nave, turning on soft lamps, lighting a candle by instinct. He didn't expect her. He lit the candle anyway. The back door opened. He turned. Elena stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, her hair damp and her hands trembling. She clutched a candle in one palm. Don't go, she said. Daniel didn't move. Not yet, she whispered. She walked forward slowly, her eyes never leaving his. I was wrong, she said, about needing to let go in order to begin again, about betrayal, about you. He didn't speak. I don't know what I'm doing, she continued. I don't know how to do this, but when you left, it felt like losing something I hadn't even let myself want yet. She held up the candle. I brought this for you, not to light alone, to light with me. He walked toward her, slow, deliberate. Their hands met over the flame. Together they lit the candle, not for the past, not just for Victor, but for something else, something unnamed, something waiting. When their hands touched again, she didn't let go this time. Daniel didn't ask what it meant. He simply stayed. The next Thursday, Daniel was already waiting inside the church when Elena arrived. She moved differently now, still careful, still reverent. But something had softened in her, as if the grief she carried no longer needed to pull her under. She sat beside him in the pew. No tea, no small talk, just the two of them, in the stillness beneath the old wooden rafters and the flicker of votives. You came early, she said. I didn't want to miss anything. She smiled at that, then looked ahead to the sanctuary. It's strange, she whispered, how this place started to feel like a pause in my life, and now it feels like the beginning of something. He turned to her. You don't have to name it yet. I know, she said, but I want to. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out 2 candles. He blinked. 2 ones, she said, for Victor, the one I always light. She lit it with practiced ease, her hands steady now. She paused for a moment in silence, lips moving in memory and prayer, in something quieter than either. And this one, she said, holding the second candle, is for what's next. Daniel didn't move. He moved. His throat tightened. She held the second candle toward him. Would you light it with me? His hand closed gently over hers. Together they brought the wick to the flame. It caught instantly, a small, steady flicker. When they set it on beside the first, the 2 flames burned side by side, neither dimming the other. I used to think love had to be one light. Elena said that to start again meant snuffing out what came before. But that's not it, is it? Daniel shook his head. No, love makes room. She looked at him. Even when it hurts, especially then. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was full of things unsaid, of things understood, of all that had been carried and all that had been chosen. He reached for her hand. She didn't hesitate this time. They sat there for a long while, hand in hand, 2 candles flickering in the quiet. Later, outside the church, the night air was warm with spring. The rain had passed, leaving everything washed and new. Elena turned to him. Do you want to come over? He raised an eyebrow. To fix another cabinet? She laughed softly. No. to stay a while. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied her face, the way the moonlight caught the silver at her temples, the softness in her eyes, the quiet courage behind the invitation. Then he nodded. I like that. They walked side by side down the stone path toward her car, toward something undefined but real. Just before they stepped off church grounds, she paused and looked back. Do you think he'd be okay with this? She asked. Daniel followed her gaze to the candlelight still visible through the stained glass. I think he said he'd be glad you stayed long enough to feel this again. She nodded, then squeezed his hand. I'm not leaving this behind, she said. I know. I'm just learning to live beside it. Daniel leaned his head gently against hers. That's all any of us can do. They kept walking, not away from grief, but towards something that could grow beside it, a second light, not brighter, just also. The story of Daniel and Elena reveals a profound truth. Healing often begins in the quiet moments we share with someone who simply stays. Elena's weekly ritual of lighting a candle for her late husband, Victor, was more than a gesture of grief. It was a testament to love's enduring presence. Daniel, the unassuming maintenance worker, didn't try to fix her pain. He offered his presence, a silent anchor in her storm. Their connection teaches us that love and loss don't compete, they coexist. Elena's fear of betraying Victor by opening her heart again mirrors our own struggles to embrace new beginnings without letting go of the past. Yet by lighting a second candle not to replace the first, but to burn beside it, she shows us that life makes room for both. This story reminds us to be patient with grief, to honor what was, and to remain open to what could be. It's in the small, brave acts like sharing tea, holding a hand, or sitting in silence that we find the courage to live again. Have you ever found unexpected healing in a quiet moment with someone? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear how love or connection helped you move forward. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and join our community. Hit the like button, share with someone who needs this message, and ring the bell for more stories that remind us of life's tender lessons. Your support keeps these heartfelt tales alive.